Hawkeyes News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
Laporta 2 years ago got scoped on, coincidentally, I just kind of ran into this the other day. November 22nd got scoped, and you couldn't keep him out of the Music City Bowl. A meaningless bowl, right, by the experts. You couldn't keep that guy out of there. And you think it's a coincidence he got drafted by the Lions and went to a Pro Bowl his first year? Jack Campbell, you me? Him missing a game? And you saw Jay Higgins, right? I mean, this guy, you better knock him down and keep him down if you're going to keep him off the field.
Kirk Ferentz on Jay Higgins, Jack Campbell, and Sam Laporta toughening it out for the sake of the team in November, and certainly a next man in, suck it up and lay it out there mentality in Maryland over the weekend. A 29-13 win for Iowa to move to 7-4 in 2024. Welcome to this Monday edition of Eye on the Hawks. Misfits, Owen Sebring, and Mike Howell here. Thanks to everybody tuning in at 1 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, where just in the last 3 minutes, Drew Stevens, as if you didn't think he could do it, your special teams player of the week in the Big Ten, 5 for 5, 2 field goals of 50+. Was going back and watching the video, putting together more, because we'll talk about Drew here in a bit. Forgot that Wisconsin kick that he put off the upright. That wasn't I think there was 57, 54, so a longer one. That wasn't just going off the upright, midway up the upright. That was the flag. That thing was going so far, and he played the wind well, and boy, a big day for Drew Stevens there in College Park.
Yeah, I mean, watching the game on TV gave you such a good glimpse of how hard those field goals were, because they showed it, behind the uprights, and it's that wind was whipping left to right, and I mean, he just drilled a few of those things. It's not like they were even barely across the crossbar. They really piped him.
A couple of those too. I think you joke about they could have been good from 70, and makes me revisit that Iowa State discussion we had.
Yeah, not a joke. Hey, the wind did a lot, but boy, yeah, he's got some boot.
And I think I saw either maybe it was the Hawkeye Twitter account post or Hawkeye FB Notes, which is a great account to follow, post that he now has a Hawkeye record for most career 50+ yard field goals. I believe he's hit 7 now from 50+.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know he went 5 for 5, and that was the record for a game.
Yeah.
Or tied the record for a game.
And maybe it was a tie the record situation with this one too, but I believe he's got 7 now from 50+ in his career, which is a record, which feels crazy because last year was the first time he started the season as a starter. I know he played a decent amount in 22 as well, but he's banging him.
Yeah, he's been terrific. We'll talk more about Drew here today. Talk about that Hawkeye defense showing up on the road in a big way and just what that defensive performance meant against the best passing team in the Big Ten coming in. We'll talk about Jackson Stratton, QB1, first start. Looked pretty solid, all things considered, with 15 dropbacks. But we'll start with the history that kind of got buried in all this because we're just so used to Kaleb Johnson being Kaleb Johnson. Finally breaks the single-season rushing touchdown record with that first score there in College Park. 21 rushing scores on the year, just a hair shy of 1,500 yards. Kaleb Johnson, we'll get into the legacy and whatnot here in a bit, but here's Kirk Ferentz talking about just that ground game. And
we don't have a...
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
He didn't mention it.
It's been a weird day of figuring out stuff. So we're not going to have Kirk Ferentz, because again,
there's nothing much to say, right?
Kirk's presser, you're he's got to say something about it, right? And I forgot even watching it Saturday night. Yeah, there were the questions about Jamari and Cade and all that stuff, and the QB situation. Oh, yeah, by the way, career high carries for Kaleb and a historic touchdown and all that. But you're watching on YouTube more of the same highlights you've been watching. What is his legacy? And we'll get into the numbers a bit, but just, again, we are at a point where it's the 11th game. He's got 21 touchdowns. He's pushing 1,500 yards, and it's not even asked about at the end of the games. And I'm forgetting that it's not talked about.
Yeah. Certainly a season that's going to be remembered right up there with the Shonn Greene season is just such a fun season to watch a running back play, where you just go out there and almost are shocked if he doesn't get 120 yards in a game. And he's the first Hawkeye running back to score a touchdown in the first, how many games are we? 11? Have we played 11 games?
Yeah. One left.
He's the only Hawkeye to ever score 11 touchdowns in their first 11 games of the season. I mean, just a season and a guy that these guys are going to remember for a long time. Somebody who, everybody knew could be good, could be special based on his first 2 years. He showed glimpses here and there and had a 200-yard game as a freshman, but was just kind of sharing with the running back room. And then this year he just breaks out. And, yeah, this is going to be one that, in the midst of a season that in some ways in a lot of ways, I guess, did not live up to the expectations. You still got Kaleb Johnson, who goes out there and has one of the most special seasons that fans are going to remember.
It's hard to judge like legacy. I think it's easier a few years afterwards because I look at that Shonn Greene year and then you look at the records and they're almost identical. If Iowa can pull off this last win, I think they went 8-4 that year.
Oh, forget about that.
And
and they were
played in Tampa.
hot. They were
That
hot.
might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if that big win over Penn State elevates Shonn's over Caleb's year because there wasn't that marquee win in this season yet.
Yeah,
Or,
and,
at all.
Shonn went for 100 yards in every single game that year. Played the bowl game, too, and just
At 131, I think, against South Carolina.
like that. Boy, yeah.
Which-
Talk about a team that was just like,
Maybe
yeah, we'll
in
see.
Tampa again.
We'll see. There is some stuff, and we don't know if he's going to opt out for the bowl game, what that scenario is going to be. He's got at least one more at Kinnick, and some stuff well within sight. Let's take a look at that season, the chase for the single season record. He's going to be hard pressed to get Shonn Greene. He has 358 yards behind Shonn's 2008 number. Again, Shonn played those 13 games, played in the bowl game, and helped stretch that record out a little farther. Tavian Banks, maybe in sight. We've seen him go for 2 bills before. He's 199 yards behind Tavian's 1997 season of 1,691 yards. Again, Kaleb with, we'll call it one game for sure remaining, 1,492 yards there. But again, tops now in rushing touchdowns in a single season.
I forget if I even mentioned this last Wednesday, but something that really is just remarkable to me is that as great as Kaleb has been this year and as good as he's been every week, it really makes you maybe look back and marvel at Shonn Greene's 2008 season because it's like, boy, Kaleb has just been so extraordinary week in and week out, and still he's going to be hard-pressed to catch Shonn Greene. Like 1850 is a really bananas number for somebody to get, when you're not – I mean, you've got Ashton Genty, who's had a pedestrian already 2,000 yards this season. Maybe if a record isn't 2,000, you think, oh, well, it's pretty good, I guess. But, boy, 1850, even in an Iowa offense, has got a superb offensive line and a guy who's having one of the best years in Iowa history for an offensive player. He still is going to be hard-pressed to catch 1850.
Now I was going to bring up that Ashton Genty because I was looking at the stats last night, just looking at, he's second in the nation in rushing. I think he's about 30 or 40 or above the guy in third place. But 2,000 yards is kind of ridiculous. But not to take anything away from Kaleb because he's doing it against, Big Ten defenses and whatnot. But it would be cool to see him get there. Like you said, what is it, like 300-something yards?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
358. Yeah, the idea that he's had...
He had to play in the bowl game, obviously.
Yeah, he's had 2 games, really, Ohio State and UCLA, where his yardage was he didn't go over 100 yards. Again, Shonn did that in all 13 games in 2008. That he's still there. He's done that in 2 games where he hasn't had the yardage. And again,
Michigan State, 98 is what this graphic says.
98, but he had the long touchdown run. But yeah, bottled up there as well. And didn't play the first half against Illinois State. Again, that's why it's really tough to compare these sometimes because they're just 2 immensely different stories. Having said that, let's continue to compare here. Career yardage, though. Kaleb is coming into the Nebraska game 7th in career rushing yards at Iowa. You see there if you're watching on YouTube this Monday's 27-34 through these 11 games.
And I put 2 games remaining because, we don't know. We don't want to speculate. I wouldn't hold it against him to opt out, but
we'll see. It'd be awesome. He is right behind Fred Russell. He should break or pass Fred for 6th all-time in career rushing yards, you'd think fairly early on Friday, all things going the right way. And if he has a typical Kaleb game, he would pass Akram Wadley. He's 138 yards behind Akram, who went for 28-72 between 14 and 17, and did a lot of his damage on the back half of his career. Had a big game in 15, filling it. He was running back 4 in 2015. He had LaShawn was out and Jordan Canzeri was out, and here's Akram going for 204 scores against Northwestern. That was a big one there in that Rose Bowl season. But there's plenty to keep chasing. Tavian Banks is 4th all-time in rushing at Iowa. He is
243 away.
3 behind him. So
I think 3rd's out of the question. Albert Young, 439 yards away.
Low key. Albert Young,
Yeah.
people forget.
Forgot about that.
He's a 3,000-yard back at Iowa. Pretty cool. So there's a lot still on the table, but of course, he will still be the focal point of the offense coming in on Friday.
If he has like 200 yards or something on Friday, which I think Nebraska has a better rushing defense than obviously Maryland, do you think that would weigh at all into his decision of whether to play in the bowl game? Like, just, I want to,
I think we care way more about numbers than anybody who's actually on the field.
I mean, Mitch is right in that sense that we do at least get caught up in the numbers more than the players, I'm sure, do. But I don't know. I could see it maybe making a little bit of a difference in his mind, just because he actually has talked to Shonn Greene, and Shonn told him, hey, go out and get my record. Like, that there's a little bit of a personal touch there where if he really gets close, like if he just needs, like 60 more yards or something, that might impact his decision at least a little bit. I won't say for sure, but I think it's possible that it could.
And this might sound a little bad, and I'm not taking it. I on Saturday when Kamari broke it, I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish it was Kaleb just so you get those yards. But obviously,
Don't do that.
it's awesome to see Kamari gets.
Don't do that, Mike.
Let's talk about
You're
Kamari,
good.
because again, first carry of the day is a fumble. That usually,
bad fumble.
It's tough, and that's on him.
Yeah.
Trying to punt the ball.
Hey, it's all right. Come back and bust one for 68 in a big spot and really put the hammer in. If Kaleb does opt out of the bowl game, he's RB1 back to the start of the season again. He's probably your top back going into 2025. What'd you learn about Kamari Moulton facing a little adversity on Saturday?
I was really encouraged too, because when he did fumble that ball, I was watching with some buddies and I was like, he's done for the half at least. Next drive, Iowa gets down near the red zone. I can't remember if they were in it, and Kirk brings him back in, and he gets a handoff, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Sure. Just because they could have gave it to Jazz. He only had like 5 carries, I think. Maybe less than that, maybe at 4.
It's more Tim than Kirk.
Yeah. I think when you turn the ball over, in my head, I think Kirk says, don't let him get, because I feel like that's happened in the past in Iowa. And maybe it was the offensive coordinator, but he, preaches protect the football that I guess when I saw him fumble, I know he's still a sophomore, young kid, I figured someone in the coaching staff would be like, all right, because it was relatively close at that point, still 3-0, I think, like, we're going to limit his touches. But it didn't, and he didn't have that issue, so kudos to him.
Yeah. I would, what I love about Kamari is that he already has got so much experience in his first 2 seasons, similar to, not quite getting the touches that Kaleb did in his first 2 years, but a lot of touches. And something that Kirk always talks about is how guys, when they step into year 3 on the roster, that's like when they really start to step into their own, start to figure things out, all the pieces kind of start to fall into place. So assuming that Kaleb is gone next year, if Kamari is in that spot as his 3rd year, I think that he's going to be ready for pretty big numbers right away.
It'll be fun to see for sure, but of course this is still a running game, but it'll continue to be because Jackson Stratton, as nice as he looked on Saturday, it would be his 2nd career start if he does roll out again against the Huskers, which all signs seem to point to that. 10 of 14, 71 yards, 15 dropbacks. Listen, they're not eye-opening, but it's Iowa football. Win of passing numbers lately been eye-opening. Here's Kirk Ferentz on what he saw from the walk-on from Colorado State, courtesy of a visit from Tim Lester like 6 months ago to San Diego, and his envisionment for him coming up on Friday.
Maybe just equally significant, he's had a week to think about it, a week plus to think about it. So instead of getting thrown in like he knew he was going to be playing, I thought he played with a lot of poise, good awareness out there, made the plays that we were hoping he'd make, and made good decisions, most importantly, and protected the football. So just a really good effort there. We're not unique in this way, but we got really good guys on our team, really good guys, and they're team guys, and they support whoever's in there. I don't think we've had, in my time here, we're, hey, the guys in this camp and guys in that camp. I don't think our guys operate that way. They're for whoever's going to be in there, and that's part of the next man concept. So, we were just, it's whoever's healthy is going to go, and whoever's healthy is going to get snaps, and that was an interesting scenario as well. But, everybody just, if Jackson's there, he's in there, we're going to support him. And he's earned a lot of respect, too, in a short amount of time, just by the way he operates. And so it's a good thing, really good thing. And it's a good thing to see those guys, play together out there today.
At this point, I guess, seeing what you saw today with Jackson, do you think Jackson will start against Nebraska?
Based on everything I know, that's few the proud, the free out there. So, you know what I mean? And he's the leader of the group right now. So, yeah, I would assume so. But we'll see what happens when the week comes. But if we got to practice tomorrow, which we won't, but we will on Monday. I assume he'll be the guy in there. Yep.
Thoughts on Jackson? QB1, first start, road game in November.
I think the best thing that you can say for a guy who showed up here in August and his most winning trait especially is that you didn't notice that he was really out there, if that makes sense. Like, you never really noticed a point where you're like, boy, this guy either seems experienced, you never thought this guy's really good, but he just did what he had to do, which was mainly giving the ball to Kaleb Johnson. But by and large, he just did everything that the team was asking of him, which was little, throw a handful of passes, mix things up a little bit, don't fumble the ball, don't make any major mistakes. That's what you got out of him.
Yeah, and it was a really tough day for quarterbacks at Maryland. It was really windy. You could tell whenever the ref talked through the mic, just it whipping around and stuff. So difficult to throw the ball effectively. He zips all of his passes. And those throws on the outside, which is something you don't see I would do much, is those out routes or even that rub when I think Bowie had a catch near the sideline. Pretty impressive. Then you look at his stats, like, 74 yards, but he did what he needed to do, converted some first downs. I think he only threw 3 passes beyond 10 yards. So you're wondering if they have that element to his game, which I think his arm is strong enough. But again, 2 of those.
I want to put that on tape for Nebraska.
That's a good point, yeah.
Nebraska's got some play action susceptibility. More on that on Wednesday. You talked about that pass to Bowie. Cade, not to bring up Cade, but in the Michigan State game in the first half, the 2 throws that he got absolutely ripped into by all the experts on here. There's a 3rd and 5 to Reese Vanderzee. Throws a little behind him. He hits him in stride. It's first down, probably a little more. There's a 3rd and 10 in the second quarter to Jacob Gill that he kind of airmails on a similar route. Not exactly this similar route, but throwing to the same side of the field that Jackson hit Bowie on. And he misses him pretty badly. 3rd and 8, second drive of your first ever start. You're on the road. You've got wind whipping. Gill runs what's kind of a post. It's basically meant as a screen 10 yards downfield to clear a passing lane. And to your point, Mike, he friggin' zips that.
Yeah, it was right in there.
It was, and listen, it's a 12-yard pass on 3rd and 8. It's great to move the sticks. But to your point, too, that's a pass that, like, you go, okay, that's shouldn't be different. That's
for
different,
sure,
man. Like, that's a throw that, and again, wasn't asked to do a whole lot the rest of the day, but, he takes the sack on the boot in the first quarter at one point, loses 10 yards. The next time he runs those, he finds his guy. And one goes to Addison that ended up being like a 3-yard loss. They counted as a rush. But then he had another one, I think it was to either Addison or Lachey, that went for a nice gainer.
Yeah.
We heard Tim Lester talk in the bye week about how he was poised but panicked. And he could tell in his feet. Go watch Jackson Stratton's feet that whole game. Again, 15 dropbacks is all. Tell me that kid's a walk-on who was completing 23% of his passes at another D1 school, and this is his first start since his senior year at La Jolla. That kid looked really nice.
His feet did look a lot more
really
calm.
Nice. And again, zip, man. Just for a guy that threw for under 75 yards and only threw 14 passes, you can't ask for much more than that. You learned a lot about that kid real quick.
So he missed, 4 passes, right? Or incomplete 4 times, right? And if you break them down, that one was that really weird, like, shovel pass that he just, like, I don't even know what happened, but he was like 2 feet in front of the guy, whatever. But the 2 deep throws in the end of the first half, I thought they weren't great throws, but he put it out in front of him and said, go make a play. But if you can't make a play, it's not going to be picked off because there were guys there. So, I don't know how you grade those, but, not bad throws. And then that one slant, and I had to watch like 2 or 3 times, but it looked like it was there, and Bowie did not expect the ball to be there or didn't see it. The slant that could have been a touchdown to Bowie, I think it was in the first quarter, or the first half. But you look at those incompletions, and you don't say, man, that's a boneheaded decision, 0 turnover-worthy throws. Like, I think you're encouraged. And, I want to see him start on Friday. I would, rather than putting in a rusty Cade who hasn't played in a month and a half, and Brendan, who might not be full strength, if he were cleared.
Or Marco. The minute I saw a picture of Marco with the biggest cast you could imagine, I'm like, okay, that red zone theory I had is long gone. But
I like the theory, but yeah, you can't really
and then
control the ball.
Kirk even said it basically in the postgame, like, we have one healthy quarterback. So you almost, like, was Marco window dressing?
He said that in the context of, I didn't, like, on Tuesday, I'm not going to tell Maryland that we have one healthy quarterback.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a case of, like, okay, not to get into Marco's medical situation, but just, hey, if you can dress help appearances. We're not going to put you in unless
Throw a jersey on.
unless
if you don't mind.
Jackson gets hurt, which then, yeah, it's Marco or Kyler Girardi, I imagine, is still QB3 out there. But
Yeah.
you're
Emergency situations only like break in case break glass, in case of emergency.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about you want to see him against Nebraska. It is an interesting question. Like, who would you want to see in the bowl game? I mean, do you think that Jackson's still the guy? I mean, Kirk didn't totally rule out Brendan Sullivan for possibly being back for the bowl game. Would you still rather see Jackson over Brendan just for safety purposes, or what would you think for the bowl game?
I think it has to depend on how he plays on Friday. If he goes out and they have more in the playbook of him throwing down the field and he does well, then I'd be heck yeah, let's see it. If it's if they end up losing or whatever, doesn't play well, then I think if Brendan's the future, then you have to play him.
I think your hope is to get both of them in the bowl game. I would think, even if it's Jackson's, you go back to what it was. Jackson's the guy out there. Brendan's the red zone.
Yeah.
Maybe has that third down package that Chad Leistigo's been asking for weeks. That'd be nice to see as well.
Maybe give him a half. Like I know Kirk just made fun of meaningless bowl game, but at the end of the day,
It's a lot of good.
I guess they count on the record. But
yeah, it's practices. Looking ahead to next year, you're going to get some young guys a lot of good experience, and you get to learn a little bit about 2025 before 2025.
One last thing on the passing game. The pass pro was excellent. I thought when Jennings Dunker was out, I was like, okay, we might be in for a long one, just because he's, I think, one of probably the best, if not the best.
There is, yeah.
Only 3 pressures on Jackson all game. Yeah. And I know they only passed 14 times, but
no,
still.
That left side of the line had a day, pass block and run block. And Nick DeYoung, a guy who's played tons of football, plugs in and held down right tackle. Back to the man of the hour, Drew Stevens, Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week. You can't ask for much more. 5 for 5, drilling them, impressing everybody, and got a tackle. Boy, when Drew Stevens gets a tackle all twice that's happened, that's a good day. Kirk Ferentz, just a little short bite on him, and then a little bit on Reese Dakin dealing with the wind as well.
It was tricky out there, the windy conditions. We haven't had a lot of wind, so that made it tricky. Drew Stevens, stating the obvious, was just really stellar and outstanding. And Reese didn't get a lot of opportunities, but I thought he did a nice job when he did. And the one punt into the wind was huge, in my opinion. Just really did a good job of helping field position.
You talk about Drew Stevens a year ago this time.
Yep.
About to run into a real rough day at Nebraska, so rough that, again, hero Marshall Meter gets trotted out there and hits his only kick. But Drew Stevens, we've talked about him a little bit, but I want you to weigh this. He's made 85% of his kicks this year. He's 17 of 20. One of his misses was that long one we talked about against Wisconsin that he bangs off the top of the upright, basically. He's perfect on extra points. There are guys that have made more than 85% of their kicks. Jonathan Kim has done that for Michigan State. We watched him make 6 against Iowa. He's missed a couple extra points, though. Is there a shot Drew Stevens is the best kicker in the Big Ten and about to get an award, a year removed from basically getting benched?
No.
Okay. All right.
I do not think that. I mean, he's going to be great as the second-team All-Conference Big Ten Kicker of the Year. Jonathan Kim is unbelievable. I think that he's an outstanding kicker, and I think Drew Stevens is going to be the preseason favorite for Big Ten Kicker of the Year next season. What he's doing this year is outstanding, and I'm excited to dig into some numbers of if he's approaching any sort of records in terms of field goals and points, that kind of thing, because he's just been so reliable this season. But in terms of best kicker in the Big Ten, I think it's Jonathan Kim, head shoulders above everybody, and then Drew Stevens, a solid second place.
I was going to say, is it second then? I would say so.
I would for sure say second.
Michigan's got a pretty good kicker, too. Same situation as Iowa. They haven't been throwing the ball a whole heck of a lot. Jonathan Kim this year is 19 of 21 field goals, 90%.
At least a few 50-plus yarders.
Yep, for sure. And then, like I said, missed the 2 extra points. Michigan's kicker is 15 of 16, so that he's the only guy with a little better kicking.
He's the number 1 tackling kicker. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You want to separate everybody? There you go.
I do think Kim will probably win the award, but I think Drew's pushing him.
Sure.
When it comes to kicks, important kicks, long kicks.
There's still a game left.
There is, yeah. So we'll see what happens then. But I mean, it was not easy to make some of those long kicks last week. And is this right? This is in the Big Ten. He has a longer kick than 54, right? Didn't he kick a 57-yarder?
That
But
was
it
the
was
one that he made
waved
against
off.
UCLA that waved off.
Oh, okay.
Should
All right.
count. Add that. Check that.
Now he's the Big Ten Kicker of the Year.
Check that for data. Yeah.
But let me ask you another question about.
A third of Jonathan Kim's kicks came against Iowa. Almost a third. 6 of his 19.
That's funny.
It's not.
If you could take a step back.
I get it.
But I said after he drilled that 55-yarder in the wind or 54-yarder in the wind, like, he's playing in the NFL, right? That leg.
See, you'd love to say yes, but like how many times have we, like Marshall Kane and Caleb Shudak and Keith Duncan, where we've been like, oh, that's the guy that's going to be the next Kading who's going to get in there. And like it doesn't happen for whatever reason it may be.
But a 54-yarder and it's good from 70, like
I know, right?
I feel like that's a little different than the Canes 57-yarder against Pitt. Like it was just barely going over. This one is like hitting the net in full, you know.
I hope so.
And NFL kicking these days kind of sucks. I'll just say it.
Well, it's a fickle business.
Unless you're like some of the 2 or 3 best kickers, like there's a lot of teams like the Vikings and Packers have already, you know, benched a kick or cut a kicker and got a new one. So I mean,
it's just it's the weirdest business position in. You could argue maybe in sports.
You could make the argument.
Professional place kicker.
You can make the argument that there shouldn't be kicking in football. Like these guys play in the trenches and they're 300 pounds.
This is an Eye on the Hawks podcast. We're not going to try to do that.
It's so funny that you say that too, because I swear it was just like a month and a half ago that people on national sports talk were saying like, boy, do NFL field goal posts need to be narrowed because NFL kickers are so good this year that they're making it look too easy. They need to make it harder for them. And now you're saying that NFL kickers suck?
Is that really the discussion? I feel like every time I watch the
I heard
game,
that on like, I mean, again, Pat McAfee show and some of those shows were
Sure.
saying like, hey, these guys are too good. Like with Cowboys kicker, what's his name? Brandon Aubrey?
Yeah.
I mean, he was so good. There were a lot of guys that were just like drilling 50-plus yarders, made it look so easy.
Well, I haven't looked at the numbers, so maybe that's the case. But like Justin Tucker's
He's having-
struggling.
He's doing
You know, Green Bay's had to get a new kicker, and then McManus has actually played pretty well for them. And then you have the Kansas City blocking the Broncos kick, and then Green Bay blocking the Vikings one, and then yesterday he got another one blocking the Vikings.
Maybe let's just give it up for the special teams on
Yeah.
the other side, right?
That's true.
It's true.
Some guys hustling on the other side of the ball there.
It is true, though, that it's such a hard place. And I mean, I feel like any place on special teams is hard to place into the NFL, whether it's kicker, punter, or long snapper, because you're basically relying on somebody retiring or something. Like, so many of these teams have their kickers, their punters, their long snappers set in stone, and they're like, we don't need to even look at anybody unless something is going wrong or unless they're retiring. And so Drew Stevens, I think, has the potential to, after a year, play in the NFL, but it all depends on what the guys in the league are going to be doing, if anybody else is struggling or if there's somebody that ends up retiring after next season.
It's wild how fast the fall off. I mean, Mike Vanderjagt was for, like a 5-6 year, like nobody was better. It was him and Kading. I think they kind of had a crossover of like, and Vanderjagt missed one kick in the playoffs and then missed a couple more, and like that was it. Like the fall off for kickers, there's just no margin for error. As good as you've been for as long as you've been, a guy like Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is going to get signed by somebody, probably a contender, to have just a really quality backup. Like quarterbacks have a little more shelf life. Man, it feels like if you screw up kicking 2 weeks in a row, your entire livelihood's it's brutal. It's really, really brutal.
Yeah.
So I hope Drew kicks in the league 15 years, man.
And it looks like I was wrong a month ago. Here's an article from ESPN, Brooke Pryor. Through 8 weeks, this is a few weeks old, league kickers have converted 73.6% of field goal attempts of 50 or more yards, besting the previous high of 71.6.
Awesome clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Mike read
maybe I'm just
something on
watching
the
all the bad kicking games like the Ravens and stuff because they're fun to watch.
I mean, it's true that what we're starting to see on highlights is field goals get taken out of the highlight runs, even if it is a 50-plus yarder sometimes. But what you do see is the blocks and the missed game winners.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we don't have this quote unquote rule, but at my last station up in Michigan, that was always like, don't show field goals. I'm like, what if we have a really good kicker? We had the number one kicker in the nation. Quinn Nordine, that's the kid who Jim Harbaugh went and slept over at his house in Rockford, Michigan. So we had the number one kicker in the country in our backyard, and they're like, yeah, we don't show field goals.
Wow.
Well, maybe Quinn, because Quinn's good. Well, other than that, we don't show field
I feel
goals.
like if a high school kicker hits a 30-yarder, I'm like, throw it in. That's like bananas for a high school kicker.
Yeah, I'll give special teamers
Sure.
a little shine. Nothing wrong with that. Speaking of giving shine, this Iowa defense, boy, the road has not been kind to them. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked about Michigan State and UCLA. against the number 1 passing offense in the Big Ten, top 10 in the country. Maryland looked pedestrian. They had 17 straight games with 200 yards passing or more. Iowa holds them under 130. And that's without Jamari Harris and with a banged-up Jay Higgins. Kirk Ferentz on his defense in College Park.
And defensively, just a really good effort by all quarters. Good job up front, putting pressure on the quarterback. Hopefully we're going to try to disrupt him, try to disrupt the receivers a little bit, and not let them just run free. And then the guys in the back end did a good job, and TJ Hall stepping in. So just happy about that. And obviously having Jay in there playing, it takes a lot to keep Jay out. I can tell you that personally, and we've witnessed that a couple times, so happy about that.
I know there's no more road games, and I know a big defensive performance for your 7th win in Game 11 might seem meh. This felt like as important or as impressive, however you want to word it, of a defensive performance for Iowa this year, given what it had done on the road, given that Jamari's not out there, given that Jay's hurt and banged up a little bit. Against that offense, just was really, really impressed. Thoughts?
Mike, what do you got?
Well, I'm trying to think about, like, when you're talking about the most important road performance, that's probably because they haven't played that well on the road, right?
Yeah, but also
And this is the last chance.
To 180 it like that with a banged up Mike.
It's true.
And and Jamari not out there. And boy, has there been a better moment for this defense, for a beleaguered, if you want to call him, guy, than TJ Hall pulling off a pick like that when he's been burned and had to just get thrown in the fire a couple times. Going back to 2 years ago this week against Nebraska, had to go in for Cooper. They immediately picked on him.
Yeah, I wonder if they were.
There again, that's one of my favorite moments this year. TJ Hall pulling off a pick that we haven't seen. Josh Jackson in 17 had the wild one. Riley Moss had a few crazy ones. Man, what a friggin' play for that kid. Couldn't be happier for him.
I wonder if they were galvanized about all the drama on the
noise,
weekend.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably talk about that in a little bit, but just what to make of kind of the subliminal messages or not, lack thereof, from the post-game stuff. But like when you have your top corner out, you're starting QB of the season at the beginning of the season. I know he was already out, but then your top tackle out, and then just go down the line. Emerging receiver, he's been out for a few weeks, and this defense just kind of stepped up. And they, I had an interesting thought too about the defense is that first half they played so well, and then like 70% of Maryland's offense came in the second half. But I think they were did the classic Kirk, like, let's sit on this lead, make them get every play. We're not going to do an Iowa State where they're going to get a 70-yard touchdown and come right back in it. So that's kind of how I saw the game. And those yards in the second half I wasn't too concerned about, just because you were up by 2 scores almost the entire time.
MJ Morris is sneaky good, too.
Yeah,
Maryland's
made a couple
Maryland's
of
in a good
throws.
spot, assuming he doesn't go anywhere else. Like,
Yeah,
he's
for
in a
sure.
good spot.
Yeah. I feel like that they do such a good job of flipping the narrative. Like, it's as soon as we think we know the narrative of this team or this defense, that's when they flip around on us. And sometimes that has been a detriment to the team. Right when we start talking about how good they are, they go and put on that performance like they did against Michigan State. But to their credit, boy, I mean, we talked about how tough they've had it on the road this season. They go to Maryland and against one of the nation's best offenses, just looked outstanding. I mean, that was as perfect of a game as you could expect out of both a fourth-string quarterback on offense and a defense that has been banged up and has been kind of pushed around on the road this season.
It's just, yeah, we looked at this game, I think, when the schedule first came out. You thought, boy, Maryland, week 11, even without, like, the Bryan storylines, which, again, gets swallowed up and nobody talks about it after the game. But people were like, that's a sneaky game. Like, Loxley's always got a good squad there. Again, you got Ty Felton. Billy Edwards is a good quarterback. So if you told folks, man, if you told everybody about what was going to happen going into the Maryland game at the beginning of the season, but you're like, hey, you're going to get out of there with a two-score win, I think people would be super, super happy. Oh, and you did it with this kid that you probably didn't think would be any part of the equation. And Jamari's out, and Jay's not 100%. Yeah, it'd be wild. And the wild part about Wilder, Iowa scores 29 points, and it slightly lowers their points per game average. Go tell somebody in 2023 that Iowa scoring 29 points in Week 11 is going to not only slightly lower their scoring average, but they have 4 regular season losses with that. Like, go blow somebody's mind with those numbers there.
I think they're like 3 or 4 points away from 325, if you guys were counting. I looked it up last night. Now I can't remember
like we
if
should
it
be
was.
counting, yeah.
I think it's 322 is what they have right now.
That sounds right, yeah.
So 3 points away. The one thing about this performance too. The D-line played very well. 12 pressures, 3 sacks, 4 hits, and 5 hurries. And now, if you kind of look at it, the inconsistency of the D-line when it comes to pressure on the quarterback, when they haven't been able to get sacks and hits on the quarterback, Michigan State, UCLA, obviously Ohio State.
Big factor.
And then when you look at the games like, I don't think they had a lot of sacks at Northwestern, so that's an outlier, but Wisconsin, Washington, and now Maryland, like they get to the quarterback. Like that's the key. And obviously Ohio State is one where it's like the better teams. And then you have mobile quarterbacks on UCLA and Michigan State that kind of can keep plays open and keep defenders away. But that seems to be like if you can get home, obviously, to the quarterback, then that defense can kind of look their chops.
On both those interceptions, too, on TJ's, I think it was Herc coming off the, or maybe it might have been Higgins. Higgins might have busted through, and just as Morris was letting go and kind of fading away and put it up there. And then on Jay's pick, finally saw, Y.A. Black told me a month or so ago about that Max Llewellyn spin move. Whew. Max hit
pretty good.
Max hit that spin move and blew Morris up, and yeah, that was a heck of a play. This is a really cool thing.
39 minutes for Mitch to mention Ethan Herkett in this podcast after his 2 sacks. Come on, man.
Hey, listen, I'm just glad Ethan, according to Kirk's post-game injury update, is doing okay. Hang tough, 49. Really cool note from Chad Leistico real quick as we briefly glance ahead to Nebraska. Jim Lachey has called 357 straight games as Ohio State football radio analyst. That streak will end Saturday in Columbus before Ohio State, Michigan, because Jim is going to be in Iowa City for Luke Lachey's senior day. He's ending his streak of almost 28 straight seasons for every single game to be at senior day.
Wow.
It's always bigger than football, folks. That's a really, really cool moment. And a lot of cool stories. I'm really interested to ask the seniors, the 6-year guys that we might get to talk to Tuesday. You get a second senior day. Mm-hmm. Is it weird? Like, does it feel bigger? Like, I'm sure some of these guys knew they had kind of an escape hatch, so to speak, to come back for a 6th year. So maybe there's a little more finality. But I am interested to talk to them about the feelings of senior day year 2.
Yeah, we talked with Nick Jackson about that already a little bit last week.
Who has no eligibility.
Who he is pretty sure this time is done. This is his last senior day. But yeah, Jay Higgins, guys like him that already went through once, and he looks forward to seeing his dad out there with some gator skins again, I think.
I need to hear about Nick Jackson's dad and Jay Higgins' dad friendship, because if they're as close as Nick and Jay, that's a special little relationship.
Jacksonized.
Jackson. Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
I tried.
We talked about that with Nick a little bit just because he kind of mentioned how his dad is also the one who's following his stats and is like kind of following how he's getting on the tackle chart. He's like, oh, I don't really pay attention. My dad has always let me know. I'm like, I had the same conversation with Jay last year because his dad was doing the same thing with his single season leader tackle record. But anyway, 2 similar families and 2 good pals.
Super, super cool. Let's check the picks before we wrap things up here.
So, good week
This
for
is
Mitch.
quickly becoming one of my more favorite segments after months of hating it.
So, we all picked Indiana to keep it close, and that was not the case. I should have, I saw a stat last week, and when 2 top 5 teams are playing and one's a double-digit underdog, they're like 0-13. This is like of all time.
Really?
This is from like a Vegas. I think I got it from the 2 Guys podcast. Chris Williams was talking about it. But they're like 0-13 straight up, and they're like 5-20 against the spread. And so the smart play would have just been taking Ohio State. But I thought Penn State would do better than they did. They won the game, but only by, I believe, 1 point at Minnesota.
Minnesota wondering whether or not they should have gone for it deep there instead of kicking the field goal to make it a 1-point game. That was a heck of a game by the Gophers.
And then Owen dropped a few more games. He picked Wisconsin. Mitch and I had Nebraska.
Bowl eligible Nebraska.
Yeah. And then he picked UCLA. We picked USC.
Barely beat it on that one. I think that was like a 6-point finish.
Welcome to my world, bud.
Yeah, 1.5. So yeah, pretty good week for Mitch. Decent week for me.
What do we go into the final week of the regular season, records-wise?
Final, Mitch is 29-33. Owen is 25-37, and then I'm 30-32. So I have a shot if I can go 3-2 next week or this week
Nobody's making
to
money.
go 500.
Nobody's making money.
We all did pick you and I to win too.
Yes, we did.
Oh yeah, I didn't put that on there, but we did.
Put that one in there.
Shout out to Mark Farley, going off a winner, really cool. And I had mentioned the ticket stubs they had walk-on from walk-on on there. Owen Sebring coming in clutch, bringing me one as a souvenir. That was really nice of you, man.
Oh, man.
Public shout.
What a good guy I am, huh?
The Panther brought.
Didn't even bring one to Mike.
Oh, that's fine, man.
Good riddance.
Mike wasn't in.
I don't know what I-
Steele's freshman year.
He's never heard of Mark
TV writing
Farley.
class. Yeah, you don't get it, man. No, awesome scene there in Cedar Falls, and FCS playoffs got a couple teams to watch there. Drake getting in, and Cam Miller, the pride of Solon, leading North Dakota State. There's some stuff to keep an eye on, certainly. It's
Yeah,
gonna
there's
be,
Waterloo West kid playing for South Dakota. I just saw he was MVFC Defensive Player of the Week. There's a lot of local kids, even though maybe they're not going to UNI quite as much anymore. A lot of kids at SDSU, USD, NDSU, UND that have some local ties.
Yep, that Illinois State team from the opener against Iowa, they're in the playoffs as well.
right.
So, hey, plenty to keep an eye on, but we're focused on a different red on Black Friday as Nebraska comes in. We'll break that down on Wednesday at 1 p.m. on
Should we-
Hawks.
I mean, I feel like it's a huge topic and we probably learn more tomorrow, but just the Jamari Harris situation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like, when I was listening to it, I kind of thought that Kirk was, read between the lines on some of the guys. Like, I guess it's been reported that Jamari was hurt a little bit, a toe
The
thing.
initial report Friday was that Jamari Harris was opting out of the rest of the 2024 season with no other context really besides that.
Yeah.
It was then, shout out to Matt Weitzel, having to do a lot of damage control on a Friday night and helping us out with the statement as well. Clarifying that Jamari has a medical situation. He's out. Sounds like it was Jamari's call, according to Kirk.
That's what he said. I
Talked
think.
about the prior. It's medical team clears you. Player says he's good to go. Coach makes the third and final decision. And it sounds like Jamari was just like, I can't go. Gave a little history about everything he's dealt with injuries. He said he's got hardware in his leg. I mean, Jamari missed all of 2022 with an injury. So we'll learn more tomorrow on that. And then Cade, kind of the same message I've been preaching. Think about what this kid's been through since the end of 21 season, and has been through a lot. And you feel for a guy that has to come out on a Friday afternoon and basically release a statement saying, I was concussed, I'm recovering, I'm still with the team. Don't get too in the weeds in the internet, because holy cow, the stuff.
There was a lot of
people
flying around.
Puff their chest out to say online about a 24-year-old.
I just
He was
think
concussed and hurt and dealt with everything, man, wild.
take the people out of the, Cade one's different. I think both of them were different. I do think it's interesting as a topic when you consider, in this day and age of college football, and I think Kirk kind of vaguely talked about it. I don't think he was talking about Jamari, about, okay, when is it okay for a player who has chance at the next level of making millions of dollars, say, and if you have a minor injury, it sounded like he could have played, but he decided not to. When is it okay to secure the future? I think it's okay whenever they want to make that call.
Yes.
But there's a lot of just discourse back and forth from people, from fans, and I guess it depends on, how you view that. But that's the discussion that I was kind of thinking, even if he doesn't play, hope we don't bury the kid. And yeah, well, obviously we won't, but it's just fans in general.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation topic. Once Iowa knew this year that they were no longer going to be playing for a Big Ten championship, which was after the Michigan State game, it's then, our player's going to opt out, which thankfully they have not. And I think a lot of guys love, as Kirk was talking about, with those guys that played all the way through the bowl game, even though it was just a minor bowl. He said, come on, everybody knows the Music City Bowl's minor bowl. Let's get real. But it does kind of make you wonder, in the future, if more guys will opt out for the last 1 or 2 games of the regular season if they're not going to be playing for a conference championship, or if rivalry games like this one, that's kind of the big thing in the last weekend is Iowa, Nebraska, Clemson, South Carolina, USC, Notre Dame. If those rivalries still do trump your preparation for the next level, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's a chance to win that game in front of fans at Kinnick for the first time in a while. You won in 2020 when there's nobody in there. You lose a tough one in 2022 that would have set the table for another West title. Go tell those players tomorrow or whenever that there's nothing left to play for on a what could be and is going to be a very cold Black Friday under the lights at Kinnick, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll talk more about it on Wednesday. And some Iowa ties coming with the Cornhuskers, who are bowl eligible, so you can't spoil their fun, but you can keep them at 6-6. Thanks for following on this Monday on Eye on the Hawks. We'll see you Wednesday. From Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. Take care until then.